Welcome to Spectrum of Wisdom, your go-to channel for insightful and enlightening content. In today's video, we delve into the fascinating world of kosher. A term you've probably heard, but might not fully understand. Originating from Jewish dietary laws, kosher has transcended into a symbol of quality and adherence to rigorous regulations. From its historical significance, cultural impact, to its modern-day interpretations and practices, we will embark on a journey to explore all these aspects. So, whether you're curious about its religious implications, or you're considering a kosher diet for health reasons, or simply wish to broaden your horizons, this video is for you. Stay tuned as we unravel the intricacies of kosher, right here on Spectrum of Wisdom. Kosher foods are foods that follow the Jewish dietary laws of kashrut, dietary law, which honor God and respect His creation. The laws of kashrut only allow food from living creatures that have certain characteristics, such as mammals that chew their cud and have split hooves, birds that are not birds of prey, and fish that have fins and scales. The flesh of any animals that lack these characteristics is prohibited by the dietary laws. Moreover, kosher mammals and birds must be slaughtered in a humane way, known as shechita, and their blood must be completely drained from the meat by salting and soaking it in water, as blood represents the life force that belongs to God. All plant-based products, such as fruits, vegetables, grains, herbs, and spices, are naturally kosher, but some produce grown in the land of Israel has additional requirements, such as giving a portion to the poor and the priests, before it can be eaten. Kosher food also separates meat and dairy products. Meat products are those that contain or are made from kosher meat, such as beef, lamb or venison, kosher poultry such as chicken, goose, duck or turkey, or byproducts of meat, such as animal gelatin. Non-animal products that are processed on the same equipment as meat or meat byproducts are also considered as meat products. Dairy products are those that contain or are made from milk or any of its derivatives, such as butter or cheese. Non-dairy products that are processed on the same equipment as milk or milk derivatives are also considered as dairy products. Because of this separation, meat and milk or their respective byproducts are never mixed in kosher foods, and different utensils and appliances are used for preparing and storing meat-based and dairy-based foods to ensure their kosher status. Another category of kosher food, called parava, contains neither meat nor dairy nor their byproducts. They include foods such as fish, eggs from permitted birds, produce, grains, fruit and other edible plants. They remain parava if they are not mixed with or processed on the same equipment as any meat or dairy products. Because of the challenges of modern food production, kashrut agencies oversee or inspect the making of kosher foods and provide a certification called a heksher to assure kosher food consumers that it has been made in accordance with Jewish law. Jewish dietary law is mainly based on Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14 verses 1 to 21. Foods that can be eaten according to Jewish religious law are called kosher in English, from the Ashkenazi pronunciation of the Hebrew term kasher, meaning fit. Foods that do not follow Jewish law are called treif, meaning torn. The Torah graciously permits the consumption of only those land animals that chew their cud and have cloven hooves. For animals, namely the hare, hyrax, camel, and pig, are specifically identified as being forbidden due to their possession of only one of the above characteristics. The hare, hyrax, and camel are hindgut fermenters and chew their cud but do not have cloven hooves, while the pig has a cloven hoof but does not chew its cud. The Torah also lists winged creatures that may not be consumed, primarily birds of prey, fish-eating waterbirds, and bats. However, certain domesticated fowl can be eaten, such as chicken, geese, quail, dove, and turkey. In the case of aquatic life, the Torah permits only those fish which have both fins and scales to be eaten. Monkfish is not considered kosher due to its lack of these characteristics. To comply with kosher requirements, a fish must have fins and easily detached scales. The scales of a sturgeon are extremely hard to remove, hence it is non-kosher. Other seafood considered non-kosher includes shellfish like clams, oysters, crabs and shrimp. There is also a risk of products like seaweed and kelp being contaminated by microscopic, non-kosher crustaceans. The Torah forbids two types of shearets, creeping things, earth crawlers such as mice and lizards, and flying creeping things, with 4 exceptions: two types of locusts, the cricket and the grasshopper. These exceptions are made in recognition of their unique characteristics. The Talmudic writers, with their profound wisdom, prohibited not only the consumption of meat from forbidden species and unhealthy animals but also their byproducts. This includes eggs and derivatives like jelly. Interestingly, products merely manufactured or gathered by animals, such as honey, were not included in this prohibition. However, there was a lively debate among the ancient writers regarding honey from animals other than bees. In their wisdom, the rabbinical writers noted that eggs from ritually pure animals have a distinctive shape, prolate or pointy at one end and oblate or rounded at the other. This characteristic helped to reduce uncertainty about whether consumption was permitted or not. The classic rabbinical writers suggest that if an animal's meat is kosher, then its milk is also kosher. However, if an animal is found to be diseased after being slaughtered, this could retroactively render their milk non-kosher. Despite this, Jewish tradition continues to regard such milk as kosher by adhering to the principle that the majority case overrules the exception. This principle is based on the statistical truth that most animals producing such milk are kosher. Interestingly, this principle is not applied to the possibility of consuming meat from an animal that has not been checked for disease. Rabbi Herschel Schachter raised an interesting point regarding modern dairy farm equipment. He argued that milk from non-kosher cows invariably gets mixed with that of kosher cows in large dairy operations, thus potentially invalidating the permissibility of consuming such milk. However, many leading rabbis and major kashrut authorities continue to rule such milk as permissible. Breast milk from a woman is considered permissible. However, it is generally agreed upon that breast milk may be consumed directly from the breasts only by children younger than 4 or 5 if the child is ill. Children older than 2 are only permitted to continue to suckle if they have not stopped doing so for more than 3 consecutive days. The case of cheese is a bit more complex due to the involvement of rennet, an enzyme that splits milk into curds and whey. Rennet can be derived from animal stomach linings, but since the 1990s it's often made recombinantly in microbes for efficiency reasons. Because rennet could potentially be derived from non-kosher animals, it could render cheese non-kosher. However, rennet made recombinantly or from kosher animals, if slaughtered according to kashrut laws, can be kosher. Cheese made from plant-derived rennet can also be kosher. Many authorities require certain stringencies in the cheese-making process for it to be considered kosher. According to the Shulchan Aruch, a rabbinic decree, called Gevinat Akam, prohibits all cheese made by non-Jews without Jewish supervision due to frequent use of non-kosher rennet in cheese. Some scholars like Rabbeinu Tam and some of the Geonim suggested exceptions in locations where cheese is commonly made with only kosher ingredients. Many contemporary Orthodox authorities do not follow this ruling and hold that cheese requires formal kashrut certification to be kosher. Some even argue this is necessary for cheese made with non-animal rennet. However, some authorities like Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik consume generic cheeses without certification. Isaac Klein's tshuva authorized the use of cheese made from non-kosher rennet, a practice widely followed by observant conservative Jews and conservative institutions. Eggs from kosher birds are considered kosher and parava, despite being an animal product. This is a fascinating aspect of these dietary laws. Occasionally, one might find blood spots within an egg. This discovery can influence the kosher status of the egg. The halacha, or Jewish law, provides guidance on this matter and varies depending on whether the egg could have been fertilized. The esteemed Rishonim and Shulchan Aruch suggest a detailed set of rules for determining whether a potentially fertilized egg may be consumed. Among these rules is the stipulation that if blood appears on the yolk, the entire egg is forbidden. To avoid the complexity of these rules, Moshe Isserles records a custom not to eat any eggs with blood spots. In cases where the egg is definitely unfertilized, many authorities, including Rabbis Moshe Feinstein and Ovadia Yosef, rule that one may remove the blood spot and then consume the remainder of the egg. This ruling is particularly relevant today, when battery eggs form the majority of available produce. The Shulchan Aruch provides guidance on whether one must check an egg for blood spots, ruling that one may consume hard-boiled eggs where checking is impossible. Moshe Isserles adds that checking is not required, but a custom exists to check eggs if they are cracked during daylight hours, when blood could be seen. A contemporary Ashkenazi authority notes that while halacha does not require checking supermarket-bought eggs, there is a minhag or custom to do so. However, in commercial settings where checking would be costly, eggs are typically not checked. Gelatin, which is hydrolyzed collagen, the main protein in animal connective tissue, could potentially come from a non-kosher source such as pig skin. Given its wide range of uses, from glue to food products, the status of gelatin in kashrut is quite controversial. Due to uncertainty over the source of individual items derived from gelatin, many Orthodox rabbis generally regard it as non-kosher. However, conservative rabbis and several prominent Orthodox rabbis argue that gelatin has undergone such total chemical change and processing that it should not count as meat and therefore would be kosher. To avoid non-kosher gelatin, substitutes with similar chemical behavior are used. These include food starch from tapioca, chemically modified pectins, carrageenan combined with certain vegetable gums like guar gum, locust bean gum, xanthan gum, gum acacia, agar, and others. With growing concerns among vegans and vegetarians about the use of gelatin, it has started to be replaced with these substitutes in many products. Today, manufacturers are producing gelatin from the skins of kosher fish, effectively circumventing many of these problems. One of the few dietary laws appearing in Exodus, with its profound wisdom, prohibits the consumption of meat from animals that have been torn by beasts. A related law in Deuteronomy extends this prohibition to anything that has died from natural causes. While primarily intended for priests, this law graciously extends to all Israelites, excluding strangers. Traditional Jewish thought holds the view that all meat must come from animals that have been slaughtered according to Jewish law. These guidelines require the animal to be killed by a single cut across the throat to a precise depth, severing both carotid arteries, both jugular veins, both vagus nerves, the trachea, and the esophagus. This ensures the animal bleeds to death. Some believe this method ensures the animal dies instantly without unnecessary suffering. However, many animal rights activists view the process as cruel, claiming that the animal may not lose consciousness immediately. Animal science researcher Temple Grandin has stated that kosher slaughter does not result in an instantaneous loss of consciousness, whereas stunning properly with a captive bolt is instantaneous. To avoid tearing and ensure a thorough cut, such slaughter is usually performed by a trained individual with a large, razor-sharp knife. This knife is checked before each slaughter to ensure it has no irregularities. If any are discovered or if the cut is too shallow, the meat is deemed non-kosher. Rabbis usually require the slaughterer, known within Judaism as a shochet, to also be a pious Jew of good character and an observer of Shabbat. In smaller communities, the shochet was often the town rabbi or a rabbi from a local synagogue. However, large slaughterhouses usually employ a full-time shochet if they intend to sell kosher meat. The Talmud and later Jewish authorities also prohibit the consumption of meat from animals who were slaughtered despite being in the process of dying from disease. This rule is not based on concern for the health of the eater, but is an extension of the rules banning meat from animals torn by beasts and animals that die from natural causes. To comply with this Talmudic injunction against eating diseased animals, Orthodox Jews usually require thorough inspection of freshly slaughtered animals' corpses. There are 70 different traditional checks for irregularities and growths. For example, checks ensure that lungs have absolutely no scars which might have been caused by inflammation. If these checks are passed, the meat is then termed glatt, the Yiddish word meaning smooth. An unusual situation arises when a live fetus is removed from a kosher slaughtered animal. The fetus, called a ben pakua, takes on the status of its mother. So if the mother was kosher, then so too is the fetus even if there were problems with its slaughter. In compliance with animal cruelty laws prohibiting such practices, compromises involve stunning the animal to lessen its suffering while it bleeds to death. However, some markets often do not accept meat produced using electric shocks to daze the animal as being kosher. Certain parts of the animal, such as forbidden fats, tendons, blood vessels, and the gid hanashe, sciatic nerve, must be removed. This process is more challenging in the rear quarters of the animal, hence often only cuts of meat from the forequarters are available. Leviticus, with its profound wisdom, prohibits the consumption of certain types of fat, chelev, from sacrificial land animals such as cattle, sheep, and goats. This is because the fat is considered a portion of the meat exclusively allocated to God, offered by burning it on the altar. The gift of the foreleg, cheeks, and more of a kosher slaughtered animal to a Kohen is a positive commandment in the Hebrew Bible. Some rabbinic opinions maintain that consumption of the animal is forbidden before these gifts are given, though the accepted halacha permits this. Furthermore, the actual foreleg, cheeks, and more of all kosher slaughtered beef are forbidden to a non-Kohen unless permitted by the Kohen. One of the main biblical food laws forbids consuming blood on account of the life being in the blood. This ban is listed in the Noahide laws and twice in Book of Leviticus as well as in Deuteronomy. Classical rabbis argued that if it is impossible to remove every drop of blood, then the prohibition against consuming blood was impractical and there should be rare exceptions. They claimed that consuming the blood that remained on the inside of meat should be permitted and that the blood of fish and locusts could also be consumed. To comply with this prohibition, traditional Judaism practices a number of preparation techniques. The main technique, known as malaya, involves soaking the meat in water for about half an hour to open pores. After this, the meat is placed on a slanted board or in a wicker basket and thickly covered with salt on each side. It is then left for between 20 minutes and 1 hour. The salt draws blood from the meat by osmosis. The salt must then be removed from the meat to complete the extraction of blood. The type of salt used in this process is known as kosher salt. Malaya is not sufficient to extract blood from organs like liver, lungs, heart, and certain other internal organs since they naturally contain a high density of blood. Therefore, these organs are usually removed before salting the rest of the meat. Roasting discharges blood while cooking and is usually used for these organs. It's also an acceptable method for removing blood from all meat. Classical rabbis, with their profound wisdom, prohibited any food item that had been consecrated to an idol or used in the service of an idol. The Talmud, considering all non-Jews as potential idolaters and viewing intermarriage with apprehension, included within this prohibition any food that has been cooked or prepared entirely by non-Jews. However, bread sold by a non-Jewish baker was not included in this prohibition. A number of Jewish writers believed that food prepared for Jews by non-Jewish servants would not count as prepared by potential idolaters, a view opposed by Jacob ben Asher. Consequently, Orthodox Jews generally rule that wine, certain cooked foods, and sometimes dairy products should be prepared only by Jews. The prohibition against drinking non-Jewish wine, traditionally called yain nesek, is not absolute. Cooked wine is regarded as drinkable because heated wine was not historically used as a religious libation. Thus, kosher wine is often prepared by Jews and then pasteurized, after which it can be handled by a non-Jew. Some Jews refer to these prohibited foods as Akam, an acronym of Ovidi Kokavim Umasalov, meaning worshippers of stars and planets, or zodiac. Akam is thus a reference to activities that these Jews view as idolatry. In many significant works of post-classical Jewish literature, such as the Shulchan Aruch, it has been applied to Christians in particular. However, among the classical rabbis, there were those who refused to treat Christians as idolaters and consequently regarded food manufactured by them as being kosher. Conservative Judaism is more lenient. In the 1960s, Rabbi Silverman issued a responsum arguing that wine manufactured by an automated process was not manufactured by Gentiles, and therefore would be kosher. A later responsum of conservative Judaism was issued by Rabbi Dorf, who argued that many foods which had once been forbidden when produced by non-Jews were eventually declared kosher. On this basis, he concluded that wine and grape products produced by non-Jews would be permissible. The Torah specifically forbids seething a young goat in its mother's milk 3 times. The Talmud interprets this as a general prohibition against cooking meat and dairy products together and against eating or deriving any benefit from such a mixture. To help prevent accidental violation of these rules, the modern standard Orthodox practice is to classify food into either being fleishig, meat, milchig, dairy, or neither. This third category is more usually referred to as parava, meaning neutral. As the biblical prohibition uses the word jedi, kid, and not the phrase Judaism, goat kid, used elsewhere in the Torah, the rabbis concluded that the flesh of all domestic mammals is included in the prohibition. Flesh of fish and bugs is not included and therefore is considered parava. By rabbinic decree, the flesh of birds and wild mammals such as deer is considered as meat rather than parava. By rabbinic law and custom, not only are meat and milk not cooked together, but they are not eaten even separately within a single meal. The laws of kashrut can be broken for pikush nefesh, preservation of human life. For example, a patient is allowed to eat non-kosher food if it is essential for recovery or where the person would otherwise starve. The Talmud, with its profound wisdom, adds to the biblical regulations a prohibition against consuming poisoned animals. Similarly, Torah cautions against drinking water that has been left uncovered overnight in an area where there might be snakes, as a snake might have left its venom in the water. However, in places where snakes are not usually found, this prohibition does not apply. The Talmud and Torah suggest that consuming meat and fish together may cause tzaraf. As a result, strictly Orthodox Jews avoid combining the two, while conservative Jews may or may not. Each year, an exciting event takes place in New York City where 5,000 food industry vendors, kosher certification agencies, journalists, and other professionals gather to sample kosher fare from 300 event attendees. This gathering is a testament to the diversity and richness of kosher food. Among the offerings at the 2018 Kosher Fest were plantain croutons from Ecuador. These gluten-free croutons were not just a delight to the palate but also won the Kosher Fest award for Best New Snack. There were also breaded dessert ravioli stuffed with sweet ricotta and chocolate chips, a parava and vegan ice cream cake made from cherry and passion fruit sorbet, a butter substitute made from coconut oil, and a gluten-free variation of Syrian sambusak dumplings. These offerings showcase the creativity and innovation in kosher food preparation. Thank you for watching this video from Spectrum of Wisdom. We hope you learned something new about kosher, the Jewish dietary laws that regulate what foods can be eaten and how they should be prepared. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more videos on various topics. You can also leave us a comment below and let us know what you think of this video or what you would like to see next. We appreciate your feedback and support. See you in the next video.